He thought the nightmare ended when he found her. But Gate 47 was never just an airport gate. It was a doorway into something far darker. Airports never really sleep. They just lower their voice. At 2:43 a.m., the world inside Terminal C felt caught between heartbeats. Fluorescent light humming above polished floors, the air conditioning sighing like it had grown tired of keeping secrets. Ethan Cole walked that echoing corridor with the kind of focus that comes from routine carved into muscle memory. His radio hissed at his belt. His boots made the same patient rhythm on the tiles, and the smell of burned coffee from the overnight kiosk followed him like a ghost. He liked nights like this. Predictable, anonymous, safe. They were the only hours quiet enough to forget the silence waiting at home. He'd been working security for 7 years, long enough to recognize every kind of traveler. The ones running from something, the ones chasing someone, and the ones who had nowhere else to go. He used to belong to the second group. These days, he was the third. Every shift was a line drawn against the memories that wanted to follow him home. A little girl's laughter echoing through the kitchen, a tiny pair of sneakers by the door, the sudden hush when they were gone. At 2:47 a.m., the radio cracked like static lightning. Security to Terminal C, Gate 47, unattended minor reported, possible lost child. For a second, Ethan froze. Numbers had weight, and 47 landed like a memory hitting bone. His hand found the radio button automatically. Copy that. On my way. He started walking faster, then running. The gate sat at the far end of the concourse, beyond sleeping passengers curled against windows and vending machines, blinking tired light. A little girl stood alone near the glass. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. Her backpack was pink, scuffed, and small enough to make the space around her feel enormous. Her cheeks were blotchy, her eyes dry, the kind of dry that only comes after the tears run out. A flight attendant hovered a few steps away, wringing her hands. I found her sitting by the seats. No guardian, no boarding pass. She just keeps saying her mom went to get snacks. He slowed, catching his breath. Hey there, sweetheart, he said gently, crouching to eye level. You waiting for someone? The girl nodded once. Mommy. What's your name? Ellie. The word was soft, unsure, like it had been borrowed. He smiled, the way you do when your chest hurts and you don't want anyone to see. That's a pretty name. Do you know your last name? She looked at her sneakers. Mommy said not to tell. Something cold slid down his spine. Okay, that's all right. You did the right thing staying here. He extended his hand. Let's go sit where it's warmer, yeah? Her hand fit into his easily, small, trusting, devastating. At the operations desk, the fluorescent light turned everything sterile. Ethan filled in the standard form, time found, location, age estimate. Ellie sat swinging her legs from the chair, tracing invisible shapes on the countertop. The tilt of her head caught him, a gesture so familiar, his breath stalled. His own daughter used to tilt her head like that whenever she pretended to listen, but was really daydreaming. He forced himself to look back at the paper. Procedure first, ghosts later. Any ID? The officer beside him asked. Ethan shook his head. Just the bag. They unzipped it carefully. Inside, crayons, a folded paper crown, a stuffed fox with one ear crudely stitched, and at the bottom, a hospital wristband. The ink had faded, but the letters were still legible. Lillian Cole. The floor tilted. His pulse hit his throat so hard he almost dropped the bracelet. Lillian Cole. Lily, his daughter's full name. He looked at the girl again. The same hazel eyes, the same tiny scar under her chin where she'd fallen off a slide at age 1. No, it couldn't be. Monica had taken Lily 6 years ago. She'd vanished, changed numbers, moved without forwarding addresses. Every attempt Ethan made ended in silence. And now, here she was. He forced his voice steady. Ellie, that's a nice fox. Where'd you get him? She smiled faintly. Daddy gave him to me a long time ago. The room went hollow. He barely heard the officer radioing child services, barely felt the chair under him. The rest of the night blurred into forms, signatures, procedural kindness. At 4 a.m., an agent from Family Services arrived, thanked him for staying calm, and told him Ellie would be taken to the protective suite until they located her guardian. Ethan followed, heart pounding. When the nurse brought a cotton swab for DNA confirmation, Ellie hesitated. "Can he stay?" she whispered. The nurse looked at the officer, who looked at Ethan. He can stay. Ethan crouched beside her again. It'll just tickle, promise. She nodded. You're not scared of the dark, are you? He smiled. Only when I forget my flashlight. She giggled, a small sound that cracked something open inside him. When she left with the nurse, she turned 3 times to make sure he was still watching. Each time, he waved. Each time, she smiled a little bigger. Then the door closed, and the quiet hit like gravity. He went home to the apartment that had learned his silence. 2 rooms, clean because loneliness likes order. On the fridge, a drawing he couldn't take down. Stick figures labeled Me and Daddy. The paper had yellowed at the edges. He sat at the table until morning blurred into noon. He didn't eat. He didn't move. He just waited. Day 1, nothing. Day 2, a message from Family Services. She was safe. DNA pending. Day 3, 7:14 p.m., his phone rang. Mr. Cole, the test came back. It's a match. She's your daughter. Everything inside him stopped and then exploded. He pressed the phone to his forehead, tears burning. 6 years of searching, begging, and losing, all collapsing into a single word. Yours. He didn't remember hanging up. He only remembered standing, then falling to his knees, the drawing on the fridge blurring into light. But Joy didn't get to breathe long. The next call came from his lawyer. Ethan, brace yourself. Monica's attorney just filed an injunction. She's claiming you abducted the child from the airport. He laughed, a dry, broken sound. She abandoned her. There's video. They're spinning it. She says you manipulated the process to seize custody. We'll fight it, but she's going public. He closed his eyes. He could already feel the courtroom's cold air, smell the recycled guilt. 3 days later, he was there. One man, one truth, one avalanche of lies coming at him in a suit. Monica entered wearing practiced sorrow, hair perfect, eyes shimmering with the kind of tears cameras love. The judge, a woman with tired kindness, looked from one side to the other. Ethan's lawyer laid everything out. Timestamps, radio logs, DNA results. Security footage played on silent. Gate 47, the vending machine, the lost girl, and the man kneeling to offer safety. Monica's lawyer painted another picture. My client fled an abusive household. She feared for her daughter's safety. Ethan stayed silent. He knew better than to fight emotion with volume. Then his lawyer handed over another folder. Passport applications filed under 2 names, tracing Monica's path across states. A pattern of disappearance, not protection. The judge turned to Monica. Why didn't you file relocation or custody modification? Monica blinked too long. I was scared. The judge sighed, weary. Scared of what, Miss Cole? Silence. The screen flickered again. An interview from Family Services. A gentle voice asked, what happened at the airport? Ellie's voice, soft but sure. Mommy said wait. Then the man with the badge held my hand. He made hot chocolate jokes. Was Mommy there? No, she said after a pause. But Daddy was. The courtroom exhaled. The ruling came quiet and final. Full legal and physical custody to Ethan Cole. When he walked out, reporters shouted questions, flashbulbs popping. He didn't answer. He saw one thing only, the small figure on the courthouse steps holding the same stuffed fox. Daddy, she said. He dropped to his knees and caught her as she ran. The hug was messy and loud and perfect. I found you, he whispered. She pulled back, smiling through tears. No, Daddy, I found you.
The first night home was both miracle and minefield. The apartment had never been ready for 2 again. It was too quiet, too small, too disciplined by solitude. Ethan had spent years keeping it spotless because order was the only thing that didn't leave him. Now Ellie's laughter filled the corners and broke his precision like sunlight breaking glass. She talked in bursts about airports, about how the fox had missed him, about how hot chocolate always tasted like safety now. She fell asleep on the couch mid-sentence, the fox pressed under her chin. Ethan sat in the dim light watching her chest rise and fall, afraid to blink in case she vanished again. He wanted to call it peace, but it felt like standing in the eye of a storm. The custody papers were still fresh ink. Monica's side hadn't surrendered easily. Appeals would come. His lawyer said, stay steady, Ethan. Judges remember the parent who doesn't lose composure. He was steady, but it cost him. Mornings came early. He'd make pancakes that looked like they'd been through security screening twice. Ellie declared them awesome. He taught her how to pack lunch. She taught taught him that mismatched socks were fashion. She filled the walls with drawings, her and him, and a fox that now had a whole family. Yet every laugh carried an undertone. 6 years gone. The questions would come. He just didn't know when. They came one night as she brushed her teeth. "Daddy?" she asked, mouth full of foam. "Why did Mommy leave?" He froze. The truth would fit nowhere safe. He crouched beside her and spoke slowly. "Sometimes grown-ups get lost too. Your mom thought she was doing what was best, but she shouldn't have taken you away. None of that was your fault." She stared into the mirror, spit, then nodded.
Okay, then quieter. Are you going to leave? Never. He meant it with his whole body. She watched him through the mirror and said, "Good. I'm tired of waiting at gates." Time folded forward. Months passed in the rhythm of rebuilding. School enrollments, therapy sessions with counselors who smiled like they'd seen everything. Papers stamped with official seals that said permanent. Ethan went back to work on light shifts, cautious. Colleagues treated him like a hero, the man who found his daughter. The story made headlines for a week before the world moved on, but not everyone forgot. Sometimes, during his rounds, he'd notice a woman at the edge of the crowd. Short hair, sunglasses indoors, posture too still, always watching. The first few times, he convinced himself it was coincidence. The fourth time, he stopped believing that. He never told Ellie. He filed reports, called his lawyer, added new locks to the door. The police said the restraining order was clear. Monica was out of state. Still, the sightings gnawed at him like static. Then one afternoon, while Ellie was at school, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. A photo appeared. It was blurry, but unmistakable. Ellie on the playground, laughing with friends. The caption read, "You can't keep her safe forever." Ethan's stomach turned to ice. He called the police. They traced the number to a prepaid phone, bought 2 towns over. No leads. The detective said, "Could be a sick prank." He knew better. That night he sat awake, the glow from the streetlight cutting bars across the floor. He didn't sleep. He checked windows. He checked the locks again. At dawn, he drove to the school early and waited. When Ellie saw him at the gate, she ran up smiling. "You're early." "Yeah," he said, trying to sound casual. "Had some time off." She frowned. "You look tired." "I just missed you." The fear lingered, like a film you couldn't scrub off. He didn't want her to see it, so he buried it under routine again. Work, home, pancakes, laughter. Repeat. A week later, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a single sentence typed on plain paper. "You think the story's over. It isn't." He brought it to the police. The officer frowned. "We'll file it, but it's not a direct threat. Keep all correspondence." He did. Every word felt like a match waiting for oxygen. Still, life found ways to heal around the edges. Ellie joined an art club, learned to ride a bike, and stopped flinching when someone raised their voice nearby. She asked fewer questions about Monica. Sometimes she'd draw pictures of a woman standing far away behind a fence, and when Ethan asked, she'd say, "That's just someone remembering us." On weekends, they'd walk along the river where planes drew lines through the sky. Ethan told her which models were which. She told him which clouds looked like foxes. One night, rain tapping the windows, she came into his room clutching a drawing. "Can you keep this?" He took it carefully. It showed Gate 47, a little girl, a man kneeling, and a small heart above them. "For when I forget," she said, yawning. He didn't ask what she meant. He just promised to keep it safe. The next morning, his lawyer called again. "Ethan, Monica's caseworker lost contact. She missed her last appointment. They think she left the state." He gripped the phone. "You're saying she's gone again?" "Yes, but she's not supposed to contact you or Ellie." He hung up. Outside, the sky was a dull metal gray. At work that night, he did his rounds slower, more alert. The terminal felt off. Every shadow was a memory waiting to breathe. He checked the security cameras twice. On one feed, Gate 47, always that gate. He froze. A woman's figure stood just out of focus near the glass, watching planes taxi. Short hair, sunglasses, a shape his gut recognized before his mind did. He ran. By the time he reached the gate, it was empty. Only reflections in the glass and the faint smell of cigarette smoke, even though smoking had been banned for years. He filed another report. The officers humored him, but their eyes said exhaustion. "She's hundreds of miles away," they said. "You're seeing ghosts." Maybe they were right, but ghosts leave evidence. When he came home, Ellie was asleep on the couch again, the fox tucked under her arm. He watched her breathe and thought, "Let the ghosts watch me back. They'll never touch her again." A week later, her school hosted a family day. Parents crowded the gym, paper streamers sagging from the ceiling. Ethan stood near the back, awkward but proud, camera ready. Ellie read a poem she'd written. It began with, "Sometimes home isn't a place, it's a person." The crowd clapped. He wiped his eyes. Then he saw her. In the far corner of the gym, half hidden behind the bleachers, stood Monica. No disguise this time, just raw eyes thinner than he remembered. Before he could move, she slipped out the side door. He followed, but by the time he reached the parking lot, rain blurred everything into smears of light. A car engine engine roared. Taillights vanished into the storm. He didn't call the police this time. He just stood in the rain until it stopped meaning anything. That night, he told Ellie a lie about bad weather and locked the doors again. But the look on Monica's face stayed with him. Not anger, not even hatred. Something worse. Regret. Weeks turned into months. The letters stopped. The world pretended to settle. Then one ordinary morning, as he poured coffee, the news on the radio said a body had been found in an abandoned warehouse 50 miles north. Female, mid-30s. No ID yet. He turned the dial off before Ellie came in for breakfast. She noticed anyway. "You okay?" "Just tired," he said. She reached across the table and took his hand. "Then don't forget your flashlight." He smiled. "Never." That night, when he finally checked his email, there was a message with no subject line. The sender's name? Unknown. The attachment was a single image. Blurry. Surveillance still. From what looked like an airport. His airport. Gate 47. In the corner of the image was a date stamp. Tomorrow. Ethan stared at the screen long enough for the light to carve his face in hard lines. The timestamp glowed like a dare. Tomorrow. For a man who had spent half his life chasing ghosts, it felt like one had finally written him an invitation. He printed the image, folded it, and slid it into his wallet. There was no way to tell Ellie. Some truths only made children inherit fear. He barely slept. When dawn finally came, he poured coffee that tasted like metal and watched the seconds pass on the kitchen clock. The normal morning routine moved around him. Ellie humming through breakfast, the sound of cereal hitting her bowl, the slam of the fridge door. She noticed his quiet. "Dad, you're in robot mode again," she teased. He forced a smile. "System update day." She laughed, and for a moment the fear loosened its grip. When she left for school, he hugged her tighter than usual. "Love you more," she said. "That's impossible." Same as always, not seeing the storm in his eyes. At work, the airport looked the same. Too bright, too polished, too many strangers pretending they weren't afraid to leave or arrive. But Ethan's focus had narrowed to one place. Gate 47. He did his rounds, signed reports, nodded through briefings, all while checking his watch. At exactly 2:47 p.m., the mirror of the time everything has started, he reached the gate. Nothing. He stood by the glass, staring at the runway lights flickering in the distance. Then his radio crackled. "Cole, you there? Go ahead. There's a woman asking for you. Says it's personal. Terminal A lobby." His pulse jumped. Description: mid-30s, brown coat, no ID. He ran. The crowd at Terminal A moved like one living organism. A wave of rolling luggage and overlapping voices. And then he saw her. Monica. She looked smaller, bones showing under pale skin, eyes like paper burned at the edges. She didn't run this time. She just stood there, watching him approach. "Monica," he said, breath tight. "You shouldn't be here." "I had to see you," she said, voice hoarse. "It's happening again." "What is?" "They're watching her." He frowned. "Who?" She shook her head. "You think I left because of you, but it wasn't you. He found us. Ethan. The man I ran to, he wasn't who I thought he sold information, pictures, not just ours, other people's kids. He made me disappear because I found out. When I tried to run, he took everything. He said if I ever told anyone, he'd—" Her words broke. His jaw tightened. "He's dead, Monica. They found his body months ago." She laughed without humor. "That wasn't him." The crowd noise dimmed like someone had turned down the volume of the world. "What do you mean?" She pulled something from her coat pocket. A flash drive. "He called himself Harker online. That was never his name. He worked with others. People who trade in faces that don't belong to them. They have access. Cameras, airports, schools, everywhere. I took a file before I ran. That's why he's still looking for me." He glanced around. "You're saying someone sent that image to scare me?" "To warn you." Her eyes glistened. "Gate 47 isn't just where you found her. It's where he started."
That's where he uploads. Before he could respond, a voice cut through the crowd. "Ma'am, step away!" Two plainclothes officers moved toward them. Monica stepped back, panicked. "You don't understand. They're not real police." One of the men reached for her arm. Ethan's instincts kicked in. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her behind him. "Hey, what's going on?" "Sir, step aside," the taller man said, flashing a badge too fast to read. Ethan's radio erupted. "Cole, do not engage. Terminal lockdown initiated. Unidentified personnel breaching perimeter." He looked back, but Monica was gone. The next 10 minutes were chaos. Security alarms, emergency codes. Passengers herded away from windows. Ethan pushed through the crowd, calling her name. Then he saw movement at the end of the concourse. A brown coat sprinting toward Gate 47. He followed. When he reached the gate, the lights had dimmed, and the large window reflected his own face back at him, alone. On the seat lay the flash drive. No Monica. He pocketed it and ran back toward the command office. "Lock this down," he ordered. "Pull feeds from every camera near 47. But when the footage loaded, the screens showed static. Every angle, every timestamp wiped clean. The tech supervisor frowned. "That's impossible. Backup servers would still have the data." Ethan leaned closer. "Check anyway." The man typed, then froze. "Sir, there's a live feed overwriting the archive. It's broadcasting something. The screen flickered. Static shifted into an image. Gate 47. Empty chairs. Then a single figure stepped into frame. Monica. She looked straight into the camera. "Ethan, if you're seeing this, they found me," she said. Her voice was calm, resigned. "Don't trust anyone. Protect her. And whatever you do, don't let her near this airport again." Then the screen went black. Ethan's pulse roared in his ears. He opened the flash drive on a secure computer. Hundreds of folders, each labeled with a different date, each containing photos, families, children, airports, schools. The newest folder was named Ellie_2.47. He opened it. One image. Ellie standing outside her school that morning, backpack over her shoulder, smiling. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. "Nice flashlight, Dad." He ran. By the time he reached the school, the final bell had just rung. Parents clouded the sidewalk. He scanned the faces until he saw her. Ellie, waving from across the street. Relief flooded him. Then she frowned, confused, pointing behind him. "Dad." He turned. A man stood by the fence. Late 30s, black cap, camera around his neck. The kind of face you forget the moment you look away. He moved toward him. The man smiled faintly, then walked into the crowd. When he reached the spot, he was gone. In his place, taped to the fence, was a photo. It was Ethan and Ellie, taken seconds ago. That night, after she was asleep, he plugged the flash drive back in. The folder named Ellie_2.47 was gone. In its place, Gate 47, tomorrow. He stared at the screen. Then, slowly, the cursor began to move on its own, letters appearing one by one. "See you soon." He yanked the drive out and smashed it against the counter, but the monitor stayed lit. The same message kept typing across every open window. "See you soon." The lights flickered. Somewhere outside, a plane thundered overhead. Ethan stood motionless, heart hammering, staring at the reflection of himself in the dark glass. In that reflection, behind his shoulder, another shape stood for the briefest second, a silhouette holding a camera. When he turned around, the room was empty. He went to Ellie's room. She was asleep, face calm, the fox still under her arm. He sat beside her bed and whispered, "No matter what happens, I'll keep the light on." At 2:47 a.m., his phone buzzed again. One image, Gate 47, and standing in the middle of it, Ellie. He jumped up, heart pounding, ran to her room. Empty bed, window open, curtains swaying. The fox lay on the pillow. Outside, in the distance, sirens wailed toward the airport. Ethan grabbed his jacket and the flashlight from the drawer. He ran into the night toward the only place this story ever seemed to end. When he reached the terminal, chaos had already bloomed. Security lights flashing, voices shouting orders. He forced his way past officers until he saw the monitors. Gate 47's camera feed was live again. There she was, Ellie, standing by the glass, looking out at the runway. He shouted her name into the radio. No response. He sprinted down the corridor, lungs burning, flashlight beam bouncing off the walls. When he reached the gate, she turned. Calm. Too calm. "Ellie," he gasped. "What are you doing here?" She tilted her head, the same way she used to when she was pretending not to be scared. "I just wanted to see where everything started." He stepped closer, scanning the shadows. "We have to go. Now." "Dad," she said softly, "you said you'd keep the light on." "I am. Always." Behind her, the big screen flickered again. For a moment, it showed static. Then Monica's face, whispering the same words from before. "Protect her." Ethan turned back, but Ellie was gone. The flash drive dropped from his hand, rolling across the floor. Its beam caught something near the glass, the fox, and behind it, a reflection that wasn't his. The camera feed on the wall changed one last time. A new file name appeared in the corner of the screen. Cole_2.48. Then the lights went out. Somewhere in the dark, a child's voice whispered, "See you soon." And the hum of the airport continued, steady and endless, as if the night had only just begun.
Airports don't dream. They keep records. By the time Ethan burst through the sliding doors, the terminal's glass had already memorized his face in 100 reflections. Sirens gnawed at the night, and red lights pulsed against the metal ribs of the ceiling, as if the building itself had a heartbeat. Gate 47 glowed at the end of the concourse like a word said too many times, losing meaning and gaining power. He ran, flashlight in hand, not because it could cut the dark, but because it was the one promise he knew how to keep. Keep the light on, keep moving, keep breathing, until you find her. The big screens were a stutter of feeds, static, maps, camera angles jumping, then fixing on the same frame. The wide glass of 47, the empty seats, the reflection of a man arriving too late. He hit the intercom at the security desk and ordered a hard guard perimeter. Officers moved. Passengers were pulled back like a tide. He called Ellie's name into the radio, into the air, into the space between seconds where prayers sometimes land, and the only answer was the long compressor hum of the building. He saw the Fox by the window, its mended year catching a strip of recessed light like a small flag, and the sight almost broke him, because whoever had placed it there knew exactly how to aim at the softest parts of a father. He swept the gate with his eyes like it was a crime scene, which it was. No scuff beyond what a crowd leaves, no struggle, no dropped phone. The camera lens and the ceiling blinked like an eye that had cried everything out. He picked up the Fox and felt for anything new. A scent, a tag, a chip, there, stitches different from his own, tighter, recent. He pressed along the seam and something thin slid against the fabric, a sticker, no larger than a fingernail, matte black with a QR glyph etched so lightly you'd miss it if you didn't know life depends on noticing. He pocketed it and forced his breathing to slow. He needed systems, not panic. He needed to stop acting like prey that had learned to fight and start acting like a hunter who remembered how to wait. Server room, he told the nearest officer. Now, the airport's data core sat beneath Terminal B, behind a door that required 2 badges and a code Ethan knew only because he'd stayed late the night a new system went in. The air inside was a refrigerated hush, fans knitting white noise. Ravi from IT, a patient man who treated networks like gardens, was already at the console, face lit by cascading logs. The 47 feeds are compromised. Not just the camera, our backup mirrors too. Something's writing over frames as they're recorded. It shouldn't be possible unless the attacker's inside our trust circle. Ethan placed the Fox on the desk and laid the sticker beside it. My bet is they're not in your circle. They're above it. Ravi frowned. Meaning they're sitting on a pipe higher than our login level. Vendor firmware, maintenance port, something nobody audits because it's supposed to be safe. Scan for outbound traffic from the CCTV subnet tunneling on non-standard ports. Ravi's fingers moved. The monitors filled with graphs that looked like cardiology readouts. Spikes, pulses, echoes. Okay, he breathed. There's a whisper load on UDP 4701 masquerading as diagnostics. It's tiny but constant. Been there for months. Every time we swap hardware, it repopulates. Ethan pointed at the date column. The whisper had started the week he found Ellie. Gate 47 had never been symbolic. It had been a socket. Block it and packet capture. And give me a live mirror of anything that claims 47. The screen flickered. For an instant the monitor showed his own face, then a directory tree. Oblique names, dates, hashes. The newest folder bore a title that tied his stomach into knots. Cole 2.48. Same language as the message that chased him here. A prompt flashed. Authenticate. The cursor moved by itself the way a smile moves on a liar's mouth. Characters typed one by one. Hello, Ethan. Ravi's hands hesitated above the keyboard. Is that chat? Ethan leaned close. The smell of coolant and metal made his chest ache. He kept his words level like you speak to a child in a nightmare. You want me, not her. The cursor ticked, patient, polite. We want the story to end in the right place. Then you're late. The ending was custody. The ending was home. The reply came fast this time. A laugh spelled with keys. Ha! Endings are for people who don't understand systems. He felt the old heat rise, the useless kind, the one that burns out and leaves you blind. He banked it into something harder. Where is she?
Location is a kindness you haven't earned. His jaw locked. What do you earn? The cursor held, a predator thinking. Payment, admission, and upload. You want me to upload something? The screen washed to a grayscale frame, Ellie's face in close, calm, eyes steady. For a second he thought it was live, then he saw the compression artifacts. She was in a service corridor, low concrete ceiling, the faint yellow line of a safety stripe. Airports share a similarity everywhere, utility like religion, and Ethan mapped it by instinct. That stripe belonged to maintenance below C, where baggage conveyors turn like old bones. He spun to the wall blueprint, traced with his finger from 47 to the guts. She's under the concourse, he said, already moving. Cut the power to the belt rooms. Dark is our friend now. That'll cause delays, Ravi warned. Delay everything, Ethan said. I'm done with schedules. They ran. Security doors yielded to his badge like it remembered being held held in steadier hands. The maintenance corridor smelled like machine oil and stories nobody told at parties. He killed his flashlight and let his eyes soak up the dim. His lungs counted distance. His feet learned the slope that means you're going somewhere you weren't invited. He turned a corner and saw a small LED winking in the floor grate ahead. He dropped to a knee. A camera the size of a coin stared up, lens irised wide. He cupped it in his palm and twisted until it came free. The feed on his pocket radio snapped to static and back. Angered, he walked, calm the way cold metal is calm. Another corner, another grate, another eye. He plucked it like a splinter. Behind the second camera lay a small square of black tape with a printed number, 2.47. No label maker does that font. The number wasn't for humans. It was for whoever needed to remember a ritual. He slid it into his wallet beside the printed image and kept going until he reached the door with the yellow hazard stripe that marked the conveyor junction. He breathed once, deep, the way swimmers do at the edge. The door groaned open. On the other side stood a rectangle of brighter shadow and the shape of a person, small, still, Ellie. She turned at the sound, and for one stuttering second he was back in that first night, the same tilt of her head that signals a child telling herself how to be brave. But then she smiled, and that broke the mirage. "You took forever," she said, in a voice that tried too hard to be light. "I got lost," he replied, "because rituals matter, and because truth dressed as a joke is sometimes the only safe truth." He stepped toward her and stopped as the floor hummed under his boots. From the far end of the corridor, a figure detached from the dark like a plug pulled free. A man in maintenance coveralls, cap low, a camera hanging from his neck like a credential. He didn't have the face of a villain. He had the kind of face you forget, which is the face professionals choose. "Dad," Ellie said quietly, "he told me Mom needed help." The man's voice was pleasant and thin. "We don't need to be dramatic, Mr. Cole. The footage we asked you to upload, really just a handshake. Then everyone goes home." "Everyone?" Ethan said. "Name the everyone. Your daughter, her mother, if she behaves, you, if you finally understand the rules." Ethan slid a foot forward, subtle, just enough to feel the grit change under his soul. The room's geometry wasn't on his side. The belt machines made blind angles and good cover. He put his attention on the bridge between sentences, the place people show their plan. "And the rules?" Ethan asked. "Stories are investments," the man said. "Yours went viral. People think finding a lost child is salvation. We know it's acquisition. That gate became a node the night you were sloppy enough to cry on camera." He said it kindly, like a dentist explaining a root canal. "We grew an audience. We sell audiences to people who require belief more than content." Ravi's voice cracked over Ethan's earpiece so softly it was almost a thought. "He's on a tether. I'm seeing a heartbeat from the ceiling. Mesh repeater likely, feeding to a backpack. If we jam near field," he flexed his hand twice. "Yes. Let her go," he told the man. "Take me. Tell your buyer the father's a better trophy. He's got more lines on his face." The man smiled in a way that didn't reach anything. "We tried that pitch. The market likes symmetry. The girl at the gate, the girl at the gate again. Returns are better on sequels." He felt the wild part of him buck its leash. He made it sit. He looked at Ellie and spoke as if this were a kitchen and not a trap. "Remember the game," he said softly. Her eyes flicked, a spark. They had a game for anxiety. 3 things you can see, 2 you can touch, 1 you can do. She breathed. "I see your boots. I see the yellow line. I see the camera." She brought her hand up, casual, like a child rubbing her eye. 2 fingers brushed the fox's ear in her hoodie pocket and found the tiny seam he'd reinforced weeks ago, because fathers don't stop fixing the same small things. She pinched something and held it ready. "Good," Ethan murmured. "What can you touch?" "Your voice," she said, and he almost broke. "And the floor." "What can you do?" She flicked a thing in her hand, a sewing needle he'd clamped to a magnet in the Fox so that bedtime toys would keep secrets. It flashed in the low light and kissed the camera lens hanging against the man's chest. The lens cracked like thin ice. The man recoiled, hand going to the strap. "That was rude. She's her father's kid," Ethan answered, and in that half second of small talk, he moved, not toward the man, toward the maintenance panel on the wall. His palm hit the red mushroom switch that electricians label like last resorts. The belt room braked, and the emergency damper slammed. Heavy sheets of steel dropped from the ceiling with a thunder at shook bone, carving the corridor into compartments. He didn't look to see if he had trapped himself with a wolf. He looked to see if his daughter had room to run. "Left," he barked. "Now!" She bolted. The man lunged, not for her, but for his repeater pack. He ripped a cord free, and the fans in the ceiling screamed as the mesh died. Ravi's whisper, signals choking, 20 seconds clean. Ethan met the man at the angle of the belt housing, close enough to smell the cool chemical of his clothes. He wasn't a fighter, he was a maintainer, but he'd learned the stupid wisdom of men who refused to stop. Make it close, make it simple, end it fast. The camera swung and cracked Ethan's brow. Light burst behind his eyes. He drove a shoulder into the man's ribs and heard the breath leave him in a single undignified oof. Hands clawed, boots scraped. The world narrowed to noise and will. 17 seconds, Ravi said in his ear. Find the backpack. The repeater pack blinked, like a heartbeat risen to a sprint. Ethan slammed the camera against the concrete until the lens was a flower of glass. He tore the pack free and hurled it into the gap between the belts. Somewhere deep in the machines, something delicate met something older and louder. Sparks walked a short, bright road, then went out. The man froze, his eyes gone flat, as if a script had left his body. "You have no idea what you've just done," he said softly. "I do," Ethan answered. "I made an audience small." The man's hand went for his pocket. Ethan didn't wait to learn if the tool inside was a blade, a key, or a phone. He set his feet the way a tired dad sits a stubborn chair, and threw his weight the only way you can when you've stopped being polite. The man hit the steel band of the conveyor with a hollow sound, slid, and wasn't a problem anymore. He turned and ran the way fathers run, part speed, part prayer. He found Ellie at the next drop door, palm pressed to the metal, eyes wide but anchored. "I knew you'd come," she said, and his chest made a new kind of pain. "We're not done," he said. They moved through the maze by sound, toward voices, away from hums, following air that smelled like public instead of industrial. He held the fox in one hand because he'd never drop it again. He didn't see the shadow peel from the wall until it spoke. "He told you not to trust police," Monica said, stepping into the light that wasn't brave enough to touch her face. "I told you to protect her. You didn't listen." "I'm listening now," Ethan said, and meant more than the moment. Monica's eyes went to Ellie and softened into a shape that once belonged to all their mornings. "Hi, Lily," she said, voice breaking on the old name. Ellie stood still, measuring 1,000 versions of her mother against the person in front of her. Then she nodded. "We should go," she said simply, not gifting the past a ceremony the present couldn't afford. Monica raised a key card. "Service door ahead. It bypasses alarms if you sing to it right." "Since when do you have access?" Ethan asked. "Since I decided to stop running and start mapping. Harker isn't a man, it's a market. The man you fought was a freelancer."
The ones above him sit in places where cameras are not for safety, but for ownership. I thought I could hide you by leaving. I was wrong. They don't lose interest. They repackage. The doors shivered open into a stairwell that smelled like the end of rain. Monica went first, and for a black second, Ethan hated her for it, because love that fails tries to lead later. He shook the thought off, because pettiness is a luxury you can't afford when the people you love are magnets for bad systems. At the top of the stairs, a blast of cooler air kissed their faces. The concourse stretched empty under the lockdown. Far away, a family huddled under the care of a patient officer. An announcement apologized to no one in particular. "We need the server room," Monica said. "He'll be trying to open new pipes. You killed a node, he'll find another." "We?" Ethan said. "You're part of this now, whether you sign a form or not," she replied. "I thought I could fix it alone, and I fed it instead." Ravi met them at the junction hall with a look reserved for people who interrupt routine and remind you life is wider than spreadsheets. "Good news," he said, breath short. "We cut the mesh. Bad news, something upstream just woke up hard. It's crawling our vendor firmware and whitelisting itself. I can't see it, I can feel it." Monica held out the fox. "Your camera bait?" Ravi blinked. "That's adorable and terrifying." "Tell me where your firmware thinks it preys at night," she said. He frowned. "Maintenance vendor. Their boxes authenticate to a cloud that lives in 3 places and nowhere. If someone slipped an update into the supply chain years ago." "They did," Monica said. "I watched him do it. The man I ran to wasn't Harker, but he took their money because he thought he was smarter. He wasn't. They were inside the header of the update he bragged about. He thought it was a watermark. It was a door. So we can't patch what we can't name," Ravi said. "We can starve it," Monica said. "Air gap the entire CCTV network, reroute its power off the main, then feed it a loop it thinks is live. A hallway that never changes. Sell it boredom. Predators hate boredom." Ravi grinned despite everything. "Marry me." "No," Monica said. "But give me your admin key." He did. They ran together. The father who refused to surrender. The mother who refused to lie again. The engineer who knew how to make a system forget why it woke up. They pulled breakers and watched the screens settle into a pastoral lie. Empty gates, idle belts, a janitor pushing the same cart past the same frame forever. The text prompt appeared once more on the server screen. "You think you won because you turned the lights off." And Monica typed so fast, her fingers blurred. "We won because we taught you to be bored." The prompt paused, then disgorged a single line. "We're not a camera." She stared. "Then what are you?" The answer came like a shrug slipped into code. "We're a calendar." Ethan felt it land in his bones. "He's scheduling," he said. "Uploads, leaks, appearances. The images aren't surveillance. They're invitations." Monica nodded. "They timestamp audiences into believing what they're about to see has already happened. That's why you got tomorrow yesterday. If you can make people feel late, you can make them rush. Rushing makes mistakes. Mistakes make markets. Ravi pushed his chair back. Okay, philosopher hacker team, love this TED Talk, but our feed's required for the first time all night, and TSA wants their backbone back. If we're going to save your family, I need a choice. Burn the bridge or leave a trap. Trap, Ethan said. Always leave a light. Monica exhaled. We simulcast a false node labeled 47 in a sandbox and leave a honeypot file named something irresistible. Give your calendar a party to attend. When it checks in, we follow the invitation back to wherever it eats, and we do not stop. The file they built together was ugly on purpose, like a motel key that promises the wrong kind of secrets. Name, Ellie Final. Inside, a looping video of an empty chair at gate 47, and beneath it, a checksum that advertised itself like perfume. They set the trap and waited, the way surgeons do before an incision. Still, sure, married to the next motion. The ping came 5 minutes later. Not from a foreign server, not from some dark address in a country that likes cold. It came from the maintenance office inside their airport. Room 3B. A place where clipboards hang and coffee dyes and paper cups. A place Ethan had walked past 1,000 nights without hearing it whisper. They ran one more time. Room 3B wasn't locked because why would it be? Predators hide best where nobody looks. Inside, a laptop without branding sat open to a screen of logs scrolling like a credit sequence. On the corkboard, a calendar printed months back was studded with pins marking arrivals, delays, staffing changes. You don't need admin rights to know the rhythms of a place. You just need to love routine, sickly enough to turn it into a weapon. Next to the board sat a phone on a cheap tripod, lens taped with a square of matte black film, identical to the sticker Ethan had found in the Fox. He peeled the film free. Underneath, the lens gleamed new. He pointed it at the floor and put his thumb over it, because some gestures are forever. Monica scanned the laptop with a thumb drive she wore on a chain under her shirt like contrition. It's a broker node, a switch that sells and buys. We kill it here, and we make noise loud enough that whoever is above it moves too fast and shows their hands. Do it, Ethan said. She did. Processes died. The logs shuddered. On a lower shelf sat an old router husk, guts replaced by something newer and meaner, its status light pulsing at a human rate. Ravi towered it down, then up, then down again. Starved it until the light flickered like doubt and died. The fire alarm tripped, because bad systems scream when you take their toys. TSA pounded on the door, shouted about protocols, waved a paper Ethan didn't read. While they raged, a computer in a different city, then a different country, then a different country again, tried to reach a node that had stopped welcoming it. Somewhere above desert or ocean, a script chose a new path. Somewhere inside the city, in a car that had lived 1,000 anonymous hours in 1,000 anonymous parking garages, a phone buzzed with a message that said nothing and everything. Lose the airport. It wasn't victory, it was oxygen. Outside, the lockdown lifted. The terminal returned to its practiced grace. Delayed flights relearned their letters. A child cried and then stopped, like someone had found a purple crayon. Ellie stood between her parents in the thin quiet that follows sirens. Is it over? She asked. Ethan did not lie. We got you back. That part is over. The rest is work. She nodded like a person who had already learned that adult answers come in layers. The report writing that followed tasted like chalk. Statements were taken. A detective with night in his eyes asked reasonable questions with unreasonable time constraints. Ravi explained the calendar and the cameras in a way that sounded like fiction repenting. Monica signed things without flinching. When they were finally released into the kind of dawn that always feels cheaply spiritual, they walked to the car, and no one said anything until the first light drew lines on the dashboard. Ellie cleared her throat. Can Fox ride up front? Ethan handed the Fox to her. Fox can drive if Fox uses his signals. She smiled. It was small, but it counted. Days evolved toward ordinary the way a bruise evolved toward yellow. The airport hardened its edges, audited its vendors, and put room 3B in a report nobody would read unless someone sued. Ethan took leave he hadn't filed for and cooked badly and often. Monica slept on the couch and woke in the night with her hand out like she was still reaching across years for a child who couldn't answer. They spoke between practical tasks. I left because I thought I could keep you clean by making you a ghost, she said one afternoon, shaking sugar into coffee like it could sweeten time. I made you bait instead. You left because he made you think you had no choices, Ethan said. That's not the same as choosing. It felt the same from my side, she said. I know, he answered, and let it be both a forgiveness and a fact. Ellie watched them with the impolite wisdom of children who have sat through adult storms. She asked precise questions. "Did you love each other?" "Yes," they said in one voice, then laughed because it sounded like a lie even though it wasn't. "Do you still?" "I love the part of him that didn't give up," Monica said. "I love the part of her that is my daughter's mother," Ethan said. "Is that allowed?" Ashley asked. "Everything tender is allowed," Monica said. School resumed. Ellie drew a final picture of Gate 47 and then put her pencils away from that subject like you put away summer clothes when the season changes. Therapy stopped being about emergency exits and started being about windows. Ethan returned to nights at the airport. Administrative only, but boredom, he had learned, was a light.
With a badge that felt heavier in an honest way. He still brought crayons. He added earplugs. He learned to spot the people who hate cameras for the right reasons. Months later, a federal case bloomed like winter flowers. Quiet, slow, inevitable. Subpoenas walked into maintenance vendors wearing calm shoes. A hearing in a city they couldn't afford to visit played out on news tickers they tried not to read. The word Harker appeared in a paragraph meant to be ignored by anyone not already hunting it. The calendar faltered, then tried new tricks on other clocks. That was somebody else's war to fight with budgets. Ethan's battlefield stayed human-sized. A seat at a school play, a spare key in a neighbor's hand, a habit of turning on the porch light early. On the anniversary of the first night, the night the radio said 47 as if it were a hymn, Ethan and Ellie walked the long concourse with hot chocolate and a decision not to be haunted. They stopped at the window where the fox had once waited. Planes did what planes do, left and returned. Ellie leaned her head on his arm. "Do you ever think about the other kids? The ones in those folders?" He nodded. "Every day." "We should make something," she said. "Not like a news thing, like a boring thing. Boredom is medicine, Mom says." Monica, behind them, snorted. "I said predators hate boredom. You turned it into a religion." Same, Ellie said. They made a small website later that week with Robbie's help. It didn't scream. It didn't beg. It taught parents how to recognize a QR that isn't a menu, a lens that isn't a lens, a calendar that isn't scheduling flights. It offered a checklist translated into the kind of English a tired person can trust. It linked to charities that pay for the kind of legal letters that make people return phone calls. It got a little traffic, then a little more, then a kind note from someone who wrote, "We thought we were crazy until we read this." Ethan printed that email and taped it on the fridge next to the oldest drawing. He had learned that fridge doors are both galleries and shields. The last thing broke and mended on a Tuesday, because Tuesdays aren't aggressive. Ethan's phone buzzed with a number that had learned to pretend to be local. He answered in a voice that knew its own muscles. A man sighed and said, "Tell your calendar to stop inviting us. We're done with you." He didn't say that their calendar never sent invites, only mirrors. He said, "People who are done don't call." The line clicked. 2 days later, a package arrived without a return address. Inside, a camera lens, cracked down the center, and a slip of paper with a single word printed in a font that made his teeth hurt. "Buy." He took the lens to the river and threw it as far as his old shoulder would allow. It sank without drama. "That's it?" Ellie asked. "That's it," he said. "Stories end without applause all the time." She nodded. "Then let's write another one." They did, as families do. Small chapters, domestic arcs, no villains, just laundry and laughter, and the kind of arguments that end in recipes. Some Fridays, Monica stayed for dinner and stayed for the quiet afterward in which people who have forgiven each other learn to share silence. On the second anniversary, Ethan walked the night shift alone because some rituals are private. He paused at gate 47 not to grieve, but to count blessings like steps. A kid waved at him through the glass. He waved back. He took out his phone and snapped a picture of empty seats and his own tired face reflected faintly. For a ridiculous second, he waited for text to type itself over the image. Nothing did. He laughed. The terminal hummed. A plane squealed in and kissed the runway like a promise kept. He started to walk away when his phone buzzed with a local alert. "Unknown file downloaded," it said, because updates think that informing you is the same as protecting you. He opened the file. It was a calendar invite. Title, "See You Soon." Location, Gate 47. Date, yesterday. The old ache tightened his throat and then let go because a different part of him had grown louder than fear. He tapped decline and typed a note in the little box nobody reads. "You picked the wrong story." Then he deleted the invitation and set his own alarm for morning pancakes. Outside, a streak of light crossed the window. No camera needed. He went home to a house where a fox watched a doorway, and a girl slept with her hand open, not closed. He left the hall light on. He always would. The airport did what it always does. Kept the records, kept the weather, kept beating. And if somewhere there was still a room with a board and a schedule and a man who liked calendars too much, that was no longer this family's problem to solve alone. They had joined the rest of the grown world where danger is managed, not defeated, and life is lived between updates. The end was not a cliff. The end was a light left on for whoever needed it next, and a door that only opened from the inside.